Mike Madman Marcum, the man who built a time machine. Tonight, we step into a story that blurs the line between genius and madness, between science and science fiction, and between life and whatever comes after time itself. This is the true story of Mike Madman Marcum, a young electrical engineering student who believed he could bend the laws of physics. A man who, according to some, may have actually done it. What began as a small experiment with a Jacob's ladder on a porch in Missouri ended with a man vanishing from the face of the earth, possibly into another point in time. Was Mike Marcum a misunderstood inventor, a victim of his own creation, or the first human to open a portal through time? Tonight, on Space: The Final Frontier, Above and Beyond, we explore the legend, the science, and the mystery behind the man who tried to build a time machine. The story begins in Stanberry, Missouri, around 1995. Mike Marcum was not your average tinkerer. He was a young man with an obsession: electricity, not just for powering lights or tools, but for unlocking the very secrets of energy itself. Friends would later describe him as brilliant, eccentric, and dangerously curious. He loved high voltage, experimenting with Tesla coils, radio wave generators, and anything that could produce plasma arcs. One day, while working with a Jacob's ladder, that classic pair of wires with a climbing electric arc, Marcum noticed something strange. As the plasma jumped between the rods, it formed a shimmering distortion, almost like a heat mirage but different. This was the spark, literally and figuratively, that ignited Marcum's obsession. If he could make one small object skip through space, could he do the same through time? Within weeks, Marcum converted his entire porch into a makeshift laboratory. Neighbors reported strange humming sounds late at night, and sometimes a glowing blue mist at his house. Marcum later told friends that he was working on a device inspired by the Philadelphia experiment, the alleged U.S. Navy test in 1943 that supposedly rendered a destroyer invisible, sending it somewhere in time. Someone joked about going back in time to get the winning lottery numbers. But where that story dealt in myth, Marcum wanted proof. He believed that by creating an intense electromagnetic vortex, he could open a rift, a doorway, that might lead to another dimension or another time. So he built what he called the Jacob's Ladder Project. It consisted of two massive rods, spaced vertically apart, wired to a modified transformer capable of generating loads of electrical output. The air between the rods would ionize, creating a bright blue arc. But Marcum didn't stop there. He added a laser, rotating magnetic fields, copper rings, and a series of tuned coils, all synchronized to resonate at a frequency he claimed could bend space-time. When he fired up his machine, he noticed a faint bluish distortion that looked almost like the area was shifting. Mike tossed a screw into the distortion. It didn't fall. It didn't melt. It simply vanished. And then, seconds later, reappeared several feet away. Was it an illusion? A trick of magnetism? Or something far more impossible? He knew at that moment he was onto something amazing, and then the machine burnt out. He realized he needed to upgrade his transformers, and he knew just where several of them happened to be lying around waiting for him to borrow. He reassembled his machine, only this time he made it much larger and fired it up. As expected, the distortion appeared much larger. Over the next several nights, he and his friends tested the time machine by throwing objects into the distortion. Except they didn't always reappear. Mike was unsure why. Then, one night, something happened. A local power transformer exploded. Entire blocks went dark. It didn't take the electric company very long to find the culprit, and police were called to investigate. When police arrived, they found Mike's equipment still glowing, and the surrounding air smelled of ozone. The police confiscated his device, citing illegal use of power lines and potential hazard to the public. Marcum was arrested for stealing electricity from the grid, but he didn't deny it. He simply said, "I needed more power. My generator couldn't handle it." To the authorities, he was a reckless amateur. To a growing number of curious minds, he was becoming a legend. After his arrest, Marcum served a short time in jail, but when he got out, he was more determined than ever. That's when he did something that would change his life. He called into the legendary Coast to Coast AM radio show hosted by Art Bell. It was January 1995. Art Bell's late-night show had become a global phenomenon, a place where scientists, whistleblowers, and experiencers of the unexplained could tell their stories. On air, Marcum introduced himself simply as Mike from Missouri. He calmly explained that he was trying to build a time machine based on principles of magnetic resonance and high-voltage plasma fields. He described how objects thrown into his device disappeared, briefly, and sometimes reappeared seconds later. Bell was fascinated but also concerned. He asked Mike what would happen if he ever stepped inside the device himself. Mike replied with chilling honesty, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." That statement would haunt listeners for years. Marcum claimed he needed higher quality transformers and vacuum tubes to stabilize the energy field. Thousands called in, offering money, equipment, and advice. Some say with his newfound money and support, he moved his experiments to a warehouse in Overland Park, Kansas, where he built a machine big enough for a human to enter. Art Bell promised to have him back on the show once the experiment was complete. And then, silence. A year passed. Then, in 1996, Marcum called into Coast to Coast again. He told Art Bell that his new machine was almost ready. This time, he was working on a larger platform model, big enough for a human being to walk into. He had upgraded his equipment, carefully grounded the system, and fine-tuned the magnetic frequencies. He was calm, confident, but there was something unsettling about his tone. Bell asked him, "Mike, if you ever try this, please don't do it alone." Marcum chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I'll record it." That was the last time anyone ever heard from him. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Mike Marcum was gone. His house was found empty, his equipment dismantled. There were no signs of struggle, no forwarding address, no goodbye note. Just gone. Art Bell and Coast to Coast listeners searched for him, but no one could locate the Madman from Missouri. Then a chilling coincidence emerged. Months later, a news report surfaced from the Pacific Northwest. A listener who had been following Mike Madman's story on the radio show highlighted a 1930 case where the police found a dead man who resembled Mike on a beach in California. The man was inside a strange metal tube with metallic burns on his body and a strange mobile-like device in his possession. Implications were made that it could have been Mike. This theory may have been debunked on Art Bell's new Midnight in the Desert radio segment on September 4, 2015, in which a person who sounded like Mike claimed it wasn't him. And then another timeline appears. Mike wakes up in a field. His mind is scrambled. He has no idea where he is, or even who he is. He walks down a road to a nearby town, Fairfield, Ohio, nearly 800 miles from his home in Missouri. As he walks, his memory is beginning to come back when he sees a newspaper with the published date of 2 years in the future. He takes a bus back to his home, and when he finally makes it back home, he finds everything is gone. I'll leave that up to you to guess who has it. Many people have asked, how is this possible? Is it really him in 3 different places? Some people argue, yes, it's most definitely him. The following explanation is how they say it is possible. When Mike opened the timeline and stepped into the vortex, he not only slipped out of his current timeline, in which another Mike 2 now, continues forward in Mike 1's place in time, unknowingly to Mike 1. Mike 1 had opened the door into many timelines, alternate realities, parallel universes, and the multiverse. Each version of himself is unaware of the other and their individual time dimensions. They explain their theory even farther. A new timeline, alternate reality on parallel universes, is formed every time a life form reaches a crossroad. For example, do I run the yellow light or stop? Each decision has a consequence. Which, by the way, covers the old someone going back in time to kill your grandpa so you were never born theory. Every outcome is based on the life form's decisions. The future can't be changed because the multiverse has everything covered. All scenarios exist, we just don't know about them because we only know the timeline we are in. Okay, this is a discussion we can have on another episode. Back to Mike. The body that was discovered under mysterious circumstances wore clothing that was decades out of date. Some claimed that this could have been Mike Marcum, someone who had traveled through time, only to meet a tragic end upon re-entry. Of course, there was never confirmation, no fingerprints, no definitive evidence, just whispers, and the lingering mystery of what really happened to the man who built a time machine. There is no evidence to support that Mike woke up in a field and took a bus back home. Could any of this have been real? Maybe, maybe not, depending on your timeline. Let's examine the science behind Marcum's theories. His setup reportedly used a combination of magnetic resonance, electromagnetic vortex fields, and plasma ionization, technologies that do exist in real physics. In theory, certain magnetohydrodynamic fields could distort space on a microscopic level, and experiments in quantum tunneling and wormhole mathematics have long speculated that strong enough electromagnetic energy might create shortcuts in space-time. But the energy required for a human-scale time displacement would be astronomical, far beyond anything that could be generated from a homemade transformer. So, what did Marcum actually build? Was it a crude particle accelerator, a plasma generator, or something else entirely? Some physicists suggest that the disappearing screw could have been pulled by electromagnetic interference or by an induced eddy current. Others say it might have been an optical illusion, the plasma bending light itself, but others aren't so sure. What if Mike accidentally discovered a temporal resonance field, a frequency that disrupts atomic position within localized space? What if he didn't vanish by accident? What if someone else wanted him and his technology? Wouldn't governments be interested in him and his invention? After all, owning it would mean supreme power. Why are we so obsessed with time travel? Because it promises two things we crave most: control and escape. Control over our past mistakes, and escape from the limits of our mortality. Mike Marcum embodied that obsession. He wasn't a con artist or a hoaxer. He never sold books or begged for fame. He was a man who looked at the boundaries of physics and said, "Let's see what happens if I cross them." That's what makes his story so compelling and so terrifying. If he failed, it's a tragedy. If he succeeded, it's something much more profound. Today, more than 25 years later, the legend of Mike Marcum lives on in forums, documentaries, and late-night podcasts. His recordings with Art Bell are archived, eerie relics of a man who may have stumbled too close to forbidden knowledge. Some claim that experimental physicists and defense contractors took an interest in his work. Others believe he's alive, living under a new identity after realizing the danger of what he had built. There are even online rumors that Marcum reappeared briefly in the 2000s, saying he had figured it out, before vanishing again. Was it all myth? Or did the Madman truly open a door he could never close? Imagine for a moment, standing before that crackling blue portal, the hum of electricity all around you. You see space bending, light shimmering like liquid glass. Would you have the courage to step through? Mike Marcum did, and whether he went forward, backward, or simply ceased to exist, his story serves as a reminder of what happens when human curiosity reaches for the infinite. Was he a genius ahead of his time, a tragic victim of delusion, or the first-time traveler in human history? Tell me what you think in the comments below, because in the end, time may not be a straight line after all. This has been Space, the final frontier above and beyond. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from above and beyond, and keep your mind open. Good night, and keep watching the skies.